The massive control room of the Galactic Hegemony's border outpost buzzed with activity. Screens covered the walls, showing stars, planets, and the occasional ship passing through their territory. The Hegemony had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. They were made up of 12 advanced alien species who believed they were the most intelligent beings in the galaxy. Lieutenant Zixpar, a thin, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, stared at his screen with growing concern. His upper right hand tapped a series of buttons while his lower hands gripped the edge of his workstation. "Commander, I'm detecting an unknown vessel entering Sector 7, Zixpar called out, his voice high and warbling. "It's not matching any known design in our database." Commander Vextol, a tall purple-skinned alien with ridge-like growths running down his back, moved quickly to Zixpar's station. He leaned forward, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the readings. "Send the data to Admiral Krazthul immediately," Vextol ordered. "This could be a new species or perhaps a new design from the Meridian Collective." Within minutes, Admiral Krazthul's massive form appeared on the main screen. His gray-scaled skin and yellow eyes gave him a fearsome appearance, enhanced by the ceremonial armor he always wore. "Report," he growled, not bothering with greetings. Vextol straightened his posture. "Admiral, we've detected an unknown ship entering our territory. Its technology appears quite advanced, faster than light capabilities, energy readings suggesting powerful engines, and what might be weapon systems." "Send me the visual data," Krazthul demanded. When the image appeared on his screen, the Admiral's eyes narrowed. The ship was sleek and white with blue markings along its hull. On its side, strange symbols were painted. USS Dauntless. "Run those markings through our language database," Krazthul ordered. A moment later, Intelligence Officer Lithmar stepped into view beside the Admiral. "Sir, those markings are from Earth. They're in a human language called English," the Admiral made a sound like rocks grinding together, the hegemony equivalent of laughter. "Humans? Impossible. They're still a primitive species fighting over resources on their home planet. They barely have the technology to reach their own moon." "Our information might be outdated," Lithmar suggested. "The last detailed study of Earth was nearly 70 cycles ago. Even so, no species advances that quickly." Krazthul dismissed the idea with a wave of his clawed hand. "The ship must be stolen technology, or perhaps another species trying to confuse us." Lithmar didn't look convinced. "With all due respect, Admiral, I suggest we investigate this thoroughly. If humans have advanced this rapidly, they could pose a significant threat." "Very well," Krazthul said reluctantly. "Dispatch a scout fleet to intercept the vessel. I want to know who is really operating it." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Dauntless, Captain Frank Miller walked through the gleaming white corridors of humanity's most advanced starship. At 45, Miller had gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of service. But there was still a youthful excitement in his step as he made his way to the bridge. This mission was historic, the first official diplomatic contact between Earth and an alien civilization. After years of observing the Galactic Hegemony from a distance, Earth's United Space Command had decided it was time to introduce themselves. The bridge doors slid open silently. The room was spacious, with workstations arranged in a semicircle facing a large view screen. Through it, stars streamed by as the Dauntless moved at speeds that would have seemed impossible just 50 years ago. "Status report, Commander Rodriguez," Miller said as he took his seat in the captain's chair. Executive Officer Alan Rodriguez turned from his console. His dark hair was cut short, and his uniform was crisp and perfectly pressed. "All systems running at optimal capacity, Captain. We should reach the Hegemony border outpost in about 2 hours." "Perfect," Miller nodded. "And our diplomatic package?" "Ready to transmit," said Communications Officer Gary Wilson, a stocky man with a friendly face. "Cultural briefings, historical records, scientific achievements, everything the diplomats thought would make a good first impression." Science Officer Lisa Bennett looked up from her station, her brow furrowed. "Captain, I'm detecting active scans targeting our ship, Very powerful ones. Already? Miller raised an eyebrow. I didn't expect them to notice us so quickly. It seems they have better long-range sensors than we anticipated, Bennett replied, pushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. And, based on the scan patterns, they're trying to analyze our technology. Rodriguez leaned forward. Captain, should we activate the cloaking system? We don't know if their intentions are hostile. Miller considered this for a moment. Let's not appear too threatening on our first meeting, but we should be prepared. He tapped a button on his chair arm. Engineering, this is the captain. Clark, here, came the response. Chief Engineer Susan Clark's voice was steady and confident. Susan, prepare the cloaking system, but don't activate it yet. I want it ready at a moment's notice. Already on it, Captain, Clark responded. I've been monitoring those scans. They're quite primitive compared to what we've dealt with before, but surprisingly thorough. Miller smiled. Earth had encountered other civilizations during its secret explorations, some friendly and some not. Those experiences had pushed human innovation forward at an incredible pace. Security status? Miller asked. Security Chief Paul Johnson, a broad-shouldered man with a perpetual serious expression, responded immediately. All defensive systems ready but inactive, sir. Shields are on standby and can be raised in 1.2 seconds. Miller nodded. Satisfied? Good. Let's proceed as planned. I want to make a good first impression, but I'm not taking any chances with the safety of this ship and crew. The view screen suddenly changed, showing a formation of small ships approaching. Captain, Wilson called out. We're being hailed. Put them through, Miller ordered, straightening in his chair. The screen flickered, and the scaled face of a hegemony officer appeared. His yellow eyes widened slightly as he saw Miller. Unidentified vessel, the alien said, his translator converting his speech to English. You have entered Galactic Hegemony space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Miller stood, his posture straight and dignified. This is Captain Frank Miller of the United Earth vessel USS Dauntless. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic relations with the Galactic Hegemony. There was a pause, and Miller could see the alien conversing with someone off-screen. When he turned back, his expression was skeptical. You claim to be human? The officer asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Yes. Miller replied simply. Impossible, the alien stated. Humans do not possess this level of technology. You will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Before Miller could respond, Rodriguez leaned over and whispered, They're targeting weapon systems on us, Captain. Miller's expression remained calm, but his voice took on a harder edge. I'm afraid we can't allow boarding at this time. We are on a diplomatic mission and you will comply, the alien interrupted, or face the consequences. Miller glanced at Rodriguez and gave a subtle nod. Now, Engineer Clark, Rodriguez said into his communicator. In an instant, the Dauntless vanished from the hegemony sensors. On the bridge, Miller watched as the alien officer's expression changed from arrogance to shock. Let's move to a safe distance and reassess, Miller ordered. It seems our first contact isn't going exactly as planned. As the Dauntless silently slipped away, the hegemony fleet frantically searched for the ship that had disappeared before their eyes. The humans had made quite an entrance, but this was just the beginning. Admiral Krazathul paced back and forth in the grand meeting chamber of the Hegemony High Council. The circular room was filled with representatives from all 12 species that made up the galactic hegemony. They sat on raised platforms, looking down at the central area where Krazathul now stood. The ship simply vanished, Krazathul said, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Our sensors detected no movement, no energy surge, nothing. Hi, Counselor Zorvan, an ancient being with pale translucent skin and glowing eyes, leaned forward. And you still believe this cannot be a human vessel? Impossible, Krazathul insisted. We have monitored Earth for centuries. 70 cycles ago, they were still using primitive combustion engines to reach their own moon. No species advances that quickly. Military leader Drevkor rose from his seat. His species was known for their forearms and red skin covered in bony plates. Then who could it be? The ship had human markings. A deception, Krazathul said firmly. Perhaps the Arcturians or the Meridian Collective, trying to confuse us by using human symbols. Cultural anthropologist Vex Nara stepped into the center of the room. Unlike most hegemony officials, she had actually studied humans extensively. Her slender form and large eyes gave her a gentle appearance despite the authority in her voice. With respect, Admiral, I believe we should consider that these might indeed be humans, she said. We've intercepted their broadcast signals for years. Their entertainment shows them to be incredibly imaginative. Their history shows rapid development compared to most species. Krazathul scoffed. Their broadcasts also show them fighting with primitive projectile weapons and combustion vehicles. They bicker constantly over resources and territory. Vexnara nodded. Yes, but remember, those broadcasts take time to reach us. What we see might be decades old. Even so, Krazathul argued, the technology on that ship was beyond anything we would expect from humans for at least another 1,000 cycles. Intelligence Officer Lithmar stepped forward. Perhaps they had help, or perhaps they stole the technology. The council chamber erupted in discussion, with some members arguing for immediate military action and others calling for caution. High Counselor Zorvan raised a hand, and silence fell immediately. We must learn more, find this ship again, discover who truly controls it. If by some miracle these are actually humans, we need to understand how they advanced so quickly. Captain Frank Miller sat in his ready room adjacent to the bridge of the USS Dauntless. The small, comfortable space allowed him to think in relative quiet. On the wall screen he could see the hegemony ship still searching for them. The door chimed softly. Enter, Miller called. Executive Officer Alan Rodriguez and Science Officer Lisa Bennett walked in together. They're still looking for us, Rodriguez said, gesturing to the screen. They've sent 4 more scout ships to join the search. Miller nodded. They seem quite determined. Bennett placed a tablet on Miller's desk. I've completed my analysis of their scan data. It's interesting, Captain. Their scanning technology is actually quite limited compared to ours. They're using an outdated form of quantum resonance imaging that we abandoned 30 years ago. Miller picked up the tablet and studied the data. So they're not as advanced as we thought? In some ways, yes, Bennett said. They have impressive faster-than-light travel capabilities, but their sensor technology, weapon systems, and shield generators seem almost primitive compared to what we've developed. The captain leaned back in his chair. That explains their reaction. They can't believe a primitive species like us could advance this quickly. Rodriguez crossed his arms. So what's our next move, sir? Continue with the diplomatic mission or retreat and report back to Earth Command? Before Miller could answer, his communicator beeped. Captain, came the voice of Communications Officer Gary Wilson. I've been monitoring their communications. They're having some kind of high-level meeting about us. They genuinely don't believe we're human. They think we stole the ship, or are pretending to be human to confuse them. Miller couldn't help but smile. Well, that's an interesting development. There's more, Wilson continued. They've dispatched what looks like a science vessel along with several warships. They're planning to capture us for study. Miller's smile faded. That complicates things. The door chimed again, and Chief Engineer Susan Clark entered without waiting for permission. Her normally calm demeanor was replaced with obvious excitement. Captain, I've been studying their propulsion technology from the scan data. It's fascinatingly inefficient. They're using a form of space-time manipulation that we experimented with briefly before developing our current quantum drive. I estimate they're operating at about 60% of our efficiency. Miller considered this information. So we not only have better cloaking technology, but we're faster too? Much faster, Clark confirmed with a grin. And their weapons, they're still using directed plasma energy. We moved beyond that decades ago. Security Chief Paul Johnson's voice came over the communicator. Captain, the hegemony fleet is expanding. Their search pattern, they're getting closer to our position. Miller stood up. All right, let's show them a little of what we can do, but not too much. Susan, I want you to drop the cloak just long enough for them to spot us. Then engage the standard drive, not the quantum drive, and move to a new position. Let's see how they react. Playing cat and mouse, Captain? Rodriguez asked with a small smile. Something like that, Miller replied. Let's head to the bridge. On the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Krazathul watched as the mysterious ship suddenly appeared on their sensors. There, he shouted. Track it, don't lose it this time. But before their weapons could lock on, the ship accelerated away at incredible speed. Unlike before, it didn't disappear. It simply moved faster than their ships could follow. Impossible, Krazathul muttered. Speed readings indicate they're moving at least twice as fast as our fastest vessels. Lithmar studied the readings with growing concern. Admiral, I'm beginning to think we should consider that these might actually be humans. Nonsense, Krazathul snapped. They must have stolen this technology. No species advances from primitive spaceflight to this level of technology in just 70 cycles. The ship appeared again, this time closer to the Hegemony fleet. It seemed to hover there as if inviting observation. They're hailing us, a communications officer reported. Krazathul hesitated, then nodded. Put them through. The image of Captain Frank Miller appeared on the screen. He looked calm and professional in his blue and silver uniform. Greetings, Admiral, Miller said politely. I believe we got off on the wrong foot. We truly are human, and we truly come in peace. Would you care to start over? Krazathul's eyes narrowed. If you are human, explain how you developed this level of technology so quickly. Miller smiled. We're quick learners, Admiral, and highly motivated. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss this further. A trap, Krazathul muttered to Lithmar. The intelligence officer whispered back. Or an opportunity to learn more. Krazathul turned back to the screen. Very well. We will send a delegation to your ship. Excellent, Miller replied. We look forward to welcoming you aboard the Dauntless. Please limit your delegation to 5 representatives. We'll transmit docking instructions shortly. As the communication ended, Krazathul turned to Lithmar. Prepare a team, armed but discreetly. I want to know everything about that ship and its crew. And if they truly are humans? Lithmar asked. Then, Krazathul said, his voice low, the Hegemony faces a threat unlike any we've encountered before. The Hegemony delegation prepared to board the human vessel. Admiral Krazathul had selected 4 others to join him. Intelligence Officer Lithmar, Cultural Anthropologist Vex Nara, Military Strategist Dorn Vex, and Chief Scientist Rilnak. Each wore formal attire with hidden weapons and scanning devices. Remember, Krazathul said quietly as they approached the docking port. Observe everything. We need to determine who really controls this ship. And if they truly are humans? Vexanara asked. Then we need to know how they advanced so quickly, Krazathul replied. No species jumps from primitive rockets to this level of technology in just 70 cycles unless they had help, or stole it. Dornvex, a large alien with ridged armor-like skin, grunted in agreement. If humans have advanced this rapidly on their own, they represent a serious threat. Such quick technological development suggests dangerous unpredictability. Their shuttle docked with a slight bump. The airlock cycled, and the door slid open to reveal Captain Frank Miller waiting with 3 of his officers. Welcome aboard the USS Dauntless, Miller said with a smile. I'm Captain Frank Miller. This is my executive officer, Alan Rodriguez, science officer, Lisa Bennett, and security chief, Paul Johnson. The humans looked exactly like the images from Earth broadcasts. 2 males and 1 female with varying skin tones but the same basic features. They wore crisp blue and silver uniforms with small insignia on their chests. Krazathul stepped forward. I am Admiral Krazathul of the Galactic Hegemony. These are my associates. He introduced each member of his team briefly. Miller nodded politely to each visitor. We've prepared a tour of our vessel, followed by refreshments and discussion in our conference room. Please follow me. As they walked through the ship's corridors, the Hegemony visitors tried to conceal their interest in the advanced technology surrounding them. The lighting was different from hegemony ships, softer but more efficient. The air circulation systems were silent but effective. Even the door mechanisms seemed more advanced, opening and closing with barely a whisper. How many crew members serve on this vessel? Lithmar asked casually. We have 120 personnel aboard, Miller replied. This is a diplomatic vessel, so our crew is smaller than our military ships. And this is just one of your fleet? Dornvex asked, his voice carefully neutral. Miller smiled. We have several ships of this class, yes. The Dauntless is our newest model, launched just 6 months ago. Chief Scientist Rilnock, who had been scanning everything discreetly with a device hidden in his sleeve, whispered to Krazathul, Admiral, these readings confirm the technology is real and functioning. This isn't a facade. Krazathul frowned, but said nothing. The tour continued to the medical bay, where the delegation met Dr. Olivia Martinez, the ship's chief medical officer. She showed them medical technology that made even Rilnock's eyes widen in surprise. This cellular regenerator can heal most injuries in minutes, Martinez explained, demonstrating on a small cut on her hand. The wound closed instantly, leaving no trace. We've nearly eliminated death from physical trauma. Next came engineering, where Chief Engineer Susan Clark proudly showed off the ship's propulsion systems, or at least the parts they were willing to reveal. This is our standard faster-than-light drive, Clark explained. It allows us to travel at approximately 300 times the speed of light. Rilnock couldn't contain himself. But that's faster than any known technology except for the ancient precursor artifacts. Clark smiled politely. Is it? How interesting. The final stop before the conference room was the bridge. The delegation stood at the back, observing as the crew worked at their stations. Through the large view screen they could see the hegemony fleet holding position nearby. Your ship is impressive, Krazathul admitted reluctantly, but I still find it difficult to believe humans developed this technology independently. Miller turned to face the Admiral directly. Let's discuss that over refreshments, shall we? In the conference room, human servers brought in drinks and food suitable for both species. Once everyone was seated, Miller activated a display on the wall. I understand your skepticism, Admiral, he said, so I'd like to show you something. The display showed a timeline of human technological development. This is our history of space exploration. The hegemony delegation watched as the timeline progressed from early rockets to the current era. As you can see, Miller continued, we went from our first orbit of Earth to landing on our moon in just 12 years. Within another 50 years, we had permanent bases throughout our solar system. And then what? Vexanara asked, genuinely curious. Then we discovered something that changed everything, Miller said. During mining operations on Mars, we found evidence of an ancient visitation. Not a hegemony species, he added quickly, seeing Krazathul's expression. Something much older. Rilnock leaned forward. The precursors? Miller nodded. We believe. So, we found no technology, just information. Scientific principles we hadn't yet discovered. It accelerated our development dramatically. Krazathul's eyes narrowed. So you did have help. Not help, Science Officer Bennett corrected. Just information. The achievements are still ours. We took basic principles and developed them in ways even the precursors hadn't imagined. Dornvex suddenly stood up. Admiral, this confirms my concerns. If humans can advance this quickly with just a hint of precursor knowledge, they are too unpredictable and dangerous to be allowed free travel in hegemony space. Before Krazathul could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Security. Chief Johnson pressed his hand to his earpiece, listening intently. Captain, he said urgently, 3 more hegemony battleships just arrived. They're powering weapons and demanding our surrender. All eyes turned to Krazathul, who looked as surprised as the humans. This is not my order, he said firmly. I am the fleet commander. Miller's expression hardened. Then it seems someone is acting without your authority, Admiral. Communications. Put the hegemony ships on screen. The wall display changed to show a hegemony commander. His scaled face showed only contempt. Human vessel, the commander said. By order of Military High Command, you will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Your technology will be claimed for the hegemony. Resistance will result in your destruction. Miller looked at Krasthul. Is this how the hegemony conducts diplomacy, Admiral? Krasthul stood up, clearly angry. Commander Brakven, stand down immediately. I am conducting diplomatic negotiations with these humans. Your authority has been temporarily suspended, Admiral, Brakven replied coldly. The High Command believes you have been too lenient with these primitives who clearly possess stolen technology. You have 5 minutes to leave their vessel before we open fire. The screen went dark. Krasthul turned to Miller, genuine regret in his eyes. Captain, I did not authorize this, but I suggest you surrender. Our battleships are the most powerful in the galaxy. Miller exchanged glances with his officers, then smiled slightly. I don't think that will be necessary, Admiral. It seems we'll need to demonstrate a bit more of our capabilities than I had planned. He tapped his communicator. All hands, battle stations. Activate defensive systems, but weapons remain on standby. Let's show our guests what humans can really do. The bridge of the USS Dauntless hummed with focused energy as the crew prepared for the coming confrontation. Captain Frank Miller stood calmly at the center, watching as the 3 hegemony battleships positioned themselves in attack formation. Shields, at maximum, Security Chief Paul Johnson reported. All defensive systems online. Admiral Krasthul and his delegation stood at the back of the bridge, watching with a mixture of concern and curiosity. They had refused to return to their shuttle, partly out of honor and partly out of desire to see what the humans would do. Your ship cannot withstand the firepower of 3 hegemony battleships, Dornvek said quietly. Each one carries enough weaponry to destroy a small moon. Miller glanced back with a small smile. We'll try to avoid damage to your vessels, but I can't promise anything. Krasthul stepped forward. Captain, let me contact them again. Perhaps I can reason with High Command. By all means. Miller gestured to the communications station. Before Krasthul could reach it, the ship rocked slightly. The lights dimmed, for a fraction of a second, then returned to normal. Warning shot, Johnson reported. They've targeted our propulsion systems, shields holding at 98%. Executive Officer Rodriguez looked up from his console. They're charging weapons for a full barrage, Captain. 2 minutes until they fire, Communications Officer Gary Wilson added. Commander Brakven is demanding our immediate surrender. Miller nodded calmly. Engineer Clark, activate the quantum displacement drive. Lisa, prepare the multi-phase shields. Science Officer Lisa Bennett's fingers flew over her console. Multi-phase. Shields active, Captain. They won't know what hit them. From the back of the bridge, Chief Scientist Rilnak whispered. Quantum displacement, multi-phase shields. These technologies are theoretical at best. The next moment, the hegemony ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy streaked toward the Dauntless from all 3 battleships. The human crew remained calm as the energy weapons struck their shields. Shields holding at 97%, Johnson reported casually, as if being fired upon by 3 warships was an everyday occurrence. The hegemony delegation stared in disbelief. Their most powerful weapons had barely affected the human ship's defenses. Impossible, Dornvex muttered. Those weapons should have vaporized your shields instantly. Multi-phase technology, Bennett explained, not looking up from her station. Your weapons are powerful, but they're operating on a single energy frequency. Our shields adapt and phase shift to neutralize the specific attack pattern. Miller turned to Clark. Engineer, demonstrate the quantum displacement drive, please. With pleasure, Captain, Clark replied with a grin. She pressed a sequence of controls on her console. What happened next left the hegemony delegation speechless. The Dauntless seemed to flicker, and suddenly there were 3 identical ships where one had been. How? Krasthul began, but couldn't finish the question. Quantum displacement, Bennett explained. We're not actually creating copies. We're existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Each version is equally real, while the drive is active. Outside, the hegemony fleet was thrown into confusion. Their sensors showed 3 identical human vessels, each seemingly solid and real. Commander Brackven ordered his ships to fire at all 3 targets. The energy beams passed harmlessly through 2 of the images and struck the shields of the real Dauntless, which absorbed the attack with minimal effort. "Shall we return fire, Captain?" Johnson asked, his hand hovering over the weapon's controls. Miller shook his head. "No, let's try something else." He turned to Communications Officer Wilson. "Open a channel to all hegemony ships." Wilson nodded. "Channel open, sir." "Attention hegemony vessels," Miller said firmly. "This is Captain Frank Miller of the USS Dauntless. As you can see, your weapons are ineffective against our defenses. We have not returned fire because we truly come in peace. I urge you to stand down before this situation escalates further." On the main screen, Commander Brackven's scaled face showed a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This is some trick. No ship can withstand that level of firepower." Miller sighed. "Engineer Clark, please demonstrate our maneuverability." Clark nodded and entered a new sequence. The Dauntless suddenly vanished from its position and reappeared directly behind the lead hegemony battleship. "As you can see, Commander," Miller continued, "if we wish to attack, you would already be destroyed. Now I suggest we all take a step back and discuss this situation rationally." On the bridge of his ship, Commander Brackven was receiving frantic reports from his crew. The human vessel had moved faster than their sensors could track. It now sat less than 100 meters behind them, in perfect position to attack their engines, their most vulnerable point. "Impossible," Brackven whispered. He turned to his second-in-command. "Are they truly humans?" "Scans confirm human life signs, Commander," the officer replied, his voice shaking slightly. "They appear to be exactly what they claim to be." Meanwhile, on the Dauntless, Admiral Krasthul moved to stand beside Captain Miller. For the first time, he regarded the human with genuine respect. "It seems I was wrong about your species, Captain," he admitted. "The hegemony has clearly underestimated humanity." Miller nodded. "A common mistake, Admiral. We found that most species do." Lithmar stepped forward. "If I may ask, Captain, why reveal yourselves now? If you possess this level of technology, you could have remained hidden from us indefinitely." Miller turned to the intelligence officer with a thoughtful expression. "Isolation isn't our goal. Humanity wants to join the galactic community, to trade, to share knowledge. We just wanted to make sure we could do so as equals, not as subjects." The communications console beeped. Wilson looked up. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony High Council. They're requesting to speak with both you and Admiral Krasthul." Miller glanced at the Admiral. "Shall we take this together?" Krasthul nodded. "I believe that would be wise." The main screen changed to show High Counselor Zorvan. The ancient alien's glowing eyes widened slightly at the sight of Miller standing side by side with Krasthul. "Admiral," Zorvan said carefully, "our sensors show some unusual readings from the human vessel. Would you care to explain what is happening?" Krasthul stood straight, his posture formal. "High Counselor, I must report that we have severely underestimated the human species. Their technological development is genuine and far beyond what we anticipated. I have witnessed capabilities that match or exceed our own best technologies." Zorvan was silent for a moment, absorbing this information. Finally, he turned his gaze to Miller. "Captain, it seems we have much to discuss. I formally invite you and your senior officers to meet with the High Council at our central world, Hegemony Prime." Miller smiled. "We would be honored, High Counselor. And what of Commander Brackven and his ships?" "They will stand down immediately," Zorvan replied, with a sharp glance off-screen that suggested Brackven was already facing consequences. "And, Captain, would you be willing to share some of your technological insights with us?" Miller exchanged glances with his officers before answering. "Some, yes. Others, we'll keep to ourselves for now. I hope you understand." Zorvan nodded. Slowly. "Indeed. It seems humanity will be a most interesting addition to our galactic community. We look forward to your arrival." As the transmission ended, the bridge fell silent. Then Rodriguez turned to Miller with a small smile. "Well, Captain, it looks like our first diplomatic mission is back on track." Miller nodded. "Set course for Hegemony Prime, maximum safe speed. Let's not keep the High Council waiting." As the Dauntless prepared to depart, the Hegemony delegation watched with new eyes. No longer did they see humans as primitive upstarts. Now they saw them as something far more significant and perhaps far more dangerous equals. The USS Dauntless approached Hegemony Prime, a massive planet with 3 moons and sprawling cities visible even from orbit. Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge, looking at the spectacular view on the main screen. After their show of force, the Hegemony had provided them with an honor escort of 5 ships. "Quite a change from trying to blast us out of space," Executive Officer Alan Rodriguez commented quietly. Miller nodded. "Nothing earns respect faster than showing you don't need it." The Hegemony capital was a city of towering spires and sweeping arches, built with materials that sparkled in the planet's golden sunlight. The Dauntless landed at a central spaceport, where a large reception committee waited. "Ready for real diplomacy?" Miller asked his senior staff as they prepared to disembark. Science Officer Lisa Bennett adjusted her uniform. "After everything else, this should be the easy part." Security Chief Paul Johnson wasn't so sure. "I still think we should bring more security, Captain." "A show of trust is important here," Miller replied. "Besides, I doubt they'll try anything after what they've seen of our capabilities." The landing ramp extended, and Miller led his team out. Admiral Krazathul waited at the bottom, alongside High Counselor Zorvan and a group of officials from various Hegemony species. "Captain Miller," Zorvan greeted them, his translucent skin glowing slightly in the sunlight. "Welcome to Hegemony, Prime." Miller bowed slightly. "Thank you for your invitation, High Counselor. We look forward to productive discussions." "As do we," Zorvan replied, though some of the officials behind him looked less enthusiastic. "Please, follow me to the Grand Council chamber." As they walked through the capital city, humans and aliens alike observed each other with curiosity. The streets were filled with members of all 12 Hegemony species going about their daily business. Many stopped to stare at the humans, creatures most had only seen in intercepted broadcasts from Earth. The Grand Council chamber was an enormous circular room with a domed ceiling that showed a real-time view of space above the planet. Hundreds of delegates sat in tiered seating, while the High Council itself occupied a raised platform at the center. Miller and his team were given seats of honor near this platform. Zorvan called the session to order. "Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Hegemony, today we welcome representatives from Earth. Recent events have demonstrated that the human species has advanced far beyond our previous assessments." A murmur ran through the chamber. Not all of it sounded welcoming. A delegate from one of the more militant species stood. "High Counselor, we must address the danger here. If humans have advanced this quickly, who knows what weapons they might develop next? Perhaps we should consider preventative measures." Miller tensed slightly but kept his expression neutral. Johnson's hand moved closer to his concealed sidearm. Admiral Krazathul surprised everyone by speaking up immediately. "I once shared those concerns, but having witnessed human technology firsthand, I must say this. If they wished us harm, we would already be defeated." This caused an even louder murmur. Krazathul was known as one of the most cautious and paranoid military leaders in the Hegemony. Furthermore, Krazathul continued, "They had multiple opportunities to destroy our ships, yet chose restraint instead. This suggests wisdom alongside their technological prowess." Zorvan nodded. "Well said, Admiral." He turned to Miller. "Captain, perhaps you could share with the Council how humanity advanced so rapidly." Miller stood and walked to the center of the chamber. "Thank you, High Counselor. The simple answer is necessity and diversity. Humans have short lifespans compared to many species, so we're driven to accomplish things quickly. We're also incredibly diverse in our thinking. Where some see competition as wasteful, we've found it drives innovation. He activated a small device that projected images above the chamber floor. This is Earth just 200 years ago. The images showed primitive steam engines, horse-drawn carriages, and simple ships, and this is Earth now. The images changed to show sprawling cities, advanced spacecraft, and peaceful crowds of humans from all races working together. We've had our struggles, Miller admitted. Wars, environmental crises, social upheavals. But each challenge forced us to adapt and improve. Cultural anthropologist Vexenara stepped forward. If I may, Captain, our studies show humans were constantly fighting among themselves. How did you overcome this to unite your world? Miller smiled. We looked up. He pointed to the stars visible through the dome. When we realized what was out there, our differences seemed smaller. Not gone, we still debate and disagree, but we found common purpose in exploration. Chief Scientist Real Nuck couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. And the quantum displacement drive? How does it actually function? Our theory suggests such technology should be impossible. Engineer Susan Clark, who had been quiet until now, laughed softly. That's what our scientists said too, until someone tried anyway. Sometimes the difference between impossible and possible is simply refusing to accept limitations. For hours, the discussion continued. Human officers answered questions about Earth culture, technology, and history. Gradually, the tension in the chamber eased as the hegemony delegates began to see humans not as a threat, but as potential allies. Finally, Zorvan raised his hand for silence. I believe we have heard enough to make a decision. The High Council proposes a formal alliance with Earth to include cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense. All in favor? The vote was not unanimous, but the majority glowed their approval lights. Miller and Zorvan moved to a small table where a treaty had been prepared. This is just the beginning, Zorvan said as they signed the document. There is much our civilizations can learn from each other. Miller nodded. That's why we came. He glanced at his team. Humanity doesn't want to conquer or dominate. We've learned those lessons the hard way in our own history. We simply want to explore, to learn and to grow alongside others. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to the Dauntless, Admiral Krazathul approached Miller privately. There's something I must know, Captain, he said quietly. We've seen impressive technology today, but I suspect you haven't shown us everything. Miller looked at the Admiral thoughtfully. Let's just say the quantum displacement drive isn't our newest innovation. Krazathul nodded slowly. I thought as much. Your restraint is reassuring. We've learned that power without wisdom is dangerous, Miller replied. That's a lesson we're still learning, to be honest. Perhaps you can teach it to the hegemony as well, Krazathul suggested. Some of our species have grown complacent over the millennia. As the humans boarded their ship, Rodriguez moved beside Miller. Well, Captain, mission accomplished. First contact established, treaty signed, and we didn't even have to fire a shot. Miller smiled as they walked onto the bridge. The best kind of victory. Where to now, sir? Asked the navigation officer. Miller looked at the starfield on the main view screen. Set course for home. Earth will want a full report. He paused, then added, and after that, there's a whole galaxy out there waiting to meet us. As the Dauntless lifted off from Hegemony Prime, species across the galactic hegemony began updating their databases. Humans, a young species with remarkable technological advancement and unexpected wisdom. Approach with respect. The ship that the Empire had spotted, the ship they had refused to believe belonged to humans, had changed the course of galactic history forever.